Hi, this is Derek Jordan. Welcome to the World Fusion Show, where we bring you the leading innovators in world fusion music. Today, my guest is the Carpe Diem String Quartet, who are joining us today via Skype from Boulder, Colorado. They met in Columbus, Ohio, and they are represented today by Charles Weatherby and Corinne Fujiwara. And just want to say, they actually performed a piece of mine a couple of years ago called Pan Afrique in Columbus. So I just want to say, welcome, Charles and Corinne, to the World Fusion Show.
Thanks, Derek. It's great to be here.
So glad you guys could join us today. It's really wonderful. So I wanted to ask you, how did you guys get started? How did you meet? How did it all begin for you?
We met in Columbus, Ohio. We both moved here for other jobs. Corinne and I both played in the symphony, and we had spouses who had teaching positions that brought us to Columbus. And we started, like most musicians who play in orchestras, you keep another side of your musical life alive by seeking out and finding people who want to play in chamber music. And we did that from
pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah, right. About mid-90s, we were playing quite a bit. Chamber music affords you a chance to pursue musical interests that you don't necessarily get to do in the orchestra. Among them, the kinds of pursuits that have landed us here on the World Fusion Show to talk about some of the projects we've done, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's so great. You guys obviously have strong classical backgrounds. That's really where you started in music. But somewhere along the line, you became very curious about other kinds of music, and you've now worked with many different world fusion and other kinds of music that we would say are non-classical. So how did you develop that interest?
Well, for me, it was kind of a simple, it was the light bulb going off to say, one day, I'm listening to a greater percentage of music that's non-classical, so to speak, than I am listening to classical. Why am I not playing any of this music that I'm listening to?
It's a similar thing. We just felt like the musical diet could be much more diverse than what we were always doing, with just a straight ahead Western European classical tradition. So that really fed an interest that we found more and more traction with, and we're very fascinated by it and pursued it.
Well, I'm so glad you did.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would love to go to our first video, and this is with an Iranian composer, Reza Vali. What was it like working with Iranian scales and that sensibility?
I think the learning curve was very steep initially. We spend our entire Western classical tradition learning where all the notes are, and where we don't put our fingers because those are out of tune, and then to be exposed to the Dasgah system where the notes exist between where the 12 notes and the chromatic scale in Western tradition. That was initially very shocking, and trying to open my mind and open my ears to that. It took a while before all of a sudden something in my head clicked. I said, oh, here it is. And then it was like Horton Hears a Who, world of intonation beyond the 12 classical chromatic notes that we were.
Exactly. We're used to half steps and whole steps, and in the Persian modal systems, you have not only quarter steps or eighth steps, you have steps that are not really an even quarter fraction. You have steps that are a
30%,
a fifth rather than a fourth step or something. And as Green said, just trying to start to get an idea of what these scales sound like and where these pitches are. On the one hand, we can move our fingers around. We don't have frets, so we have the flexibility to play virtually any pitch, and yet getting your ear to recognize where your fingers ought to go, that takes a while.
Yeah.
I guess it does. So let's go to this video right now, okay? All right. right, so we're back. That was great. Really interesting stuff. Very unusual. I think it's great that you guys could wrap your brains around that music and bring that to us. So tell me a little bit about your general philosophy and what your purpose of your music is.
Well, our general philosophy, if there is one, is that as a performing group, we want to follow all of our passion and curiosity wherever it takes us. And we want to bring what we find to be interesting and beautiful. We want to bring that to the audiences that we perform for. And we want to do that at the highest level we can. So we go down a lot of different roads now, trying these different collaborations, and they're all interesting and rewarding. Some of them are things that we continue with because they just seem to work so well. And others may be projects that we don't carry on year after year after year necessarily. They might be things that we try and say this was great, but it didn't necessarily work as to stay in our repertoire. But yeah, I don't know.
That's also akin to our mission, is that since we are just a string quartet, we're very mobile. And so we can take these interesting collaborations outside of the concert hall. We can take them into classrooms. We can take them into libraries, into retirement communities and skilled nursing facilities, and bring all of this music to an even wider range of people who wouldn't necessarily come or be able to come to a concert hall. So it gives us that much more a broad audience, a very broad demographic that we can reach all of this world of music to a greater amount of people in the world.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, you really do work with a very diverse group of people and styles of music. I'd love to talk about the next video we're going to see, which is Ghost Opera by Tandun. and you've performed this piece a few times, and you work with a pipa player, and you do some really cool stuff where you're not playing your fiddles and whatever. And so tell us about what that process was like.
It's just such a neat piece, because the composer has placed the quartet in a performing setting where we're, as you said, we're playing percussion instruments, including instruments that the composer sort of invented. You're playing rocks instead of a drum or another type of percussion instrument, and you're playing those rocks and pitching the sounds by holding them close to your mouth and altering how it resonates. The water gongs. We also have text that we recite, poetry that we recite during the performance, and then working with the pipa player, who again, I mean, it's such a brilliant instrument. But it's so different, and right. you find yourself adapting how you play your instrument,
right,
to fit the sounds you're creating into this new soundscape. It's just fantastic.
Also, there's some staging done where we're wandering from area to area, playing and sometimes singing and chanting, either playing our own instruments or playing a lute or little cymbals.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go and watch the video now. Check out an excerpt of this wonderful piece by Tan Dun. All right, that's some wacky stuff. I like that a lot. That must have been a lot of fun to do. I'm sure it was.
We even got to the point where we had the opportunity to go choose our own rocks.
Excellent. Very nice. Personal touch there.
Yes.
So you've worked with sax players. You recently just did a new CD with a mandolin player that you're really excited about, I know. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we just released a CD with a composer and mandolin performer, Jeff Midkiff. It's just fabulous music. The mandolin sound combines so well with the string quartet, and his composition is very skillful in how it weaves both these very sort of folk, traditional folk sounds of the mandolin and the strings, but into a really wonderful texture that also takes advantage of what a string quartet can do. it's a great combination, both of sort of that simplicity and complexity, I guess I would say.
Yeah, it's great. You know, also, you guys are into bluegrass. And I know, Corinne, you did this wonderful piece that we're going to go to on our third video, which is a piece you wrote, and we're going to do the Stillwater Gorge movement. And it's really fantastic because, I mean, it's a little unusual for classical players to have such a, I think, strong and authentic bluegrass feeling in their music. So how was that for you guys to work out?
Oh, you know, it's a real privilege to be able to write music for such a wonderful group of colleagues and have them embrace it as if it was their own. I'm very fortunate as a composer that way. Fiddle Suite Montana, the entire work was based on my experience as a fiddler. In the summertime, I would put my classical hat aside and put on my fiddle hat and do fiddle competitions. And so this arose partly out of that experience, and it's grown to this 5-movement work with a lot of geographical, biographical tie-ins. And so Stillwater Gorge is it's an actual location in the Beartooth Mountains in Montana, and it was a place I used to go all the time as a kid to go hiking and camping with my family, and I was blown away by the power of the Stillwater River as it went through the gorge, just slicing through the side of this mountain, and I wanted to capture that in music. And so I thought, what better way to do it than 2 fast folk dances, a jig and a reel. And so that's what Stillwater Gorge is. It's a combination of a jig and then a reel.
It's beautiful. Let's listen and watch this right now. Yeah, fantastic. I love that. So nicely done. I want to just say that there are 2 other members of your group who we have not introduced, and of course, you saw them in these videos. Can you please introduce them to us?
Yeah, playing second violin, so stunningly there on that Stillwater Gorge was Amy Galuzzo, and rocking away with me on the cello, Carol O.
Yes, thank you. That's great. You have a wonderful sound together. I want to really just thank you so much for joining us today on the show, Corinne Fujiwara and Charles Weatherby. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Derek, so much.
All right, great. All right, cool. Hey, so now we're going to go and listen to an excerpt of a piece that we did together in Columbus a couple of years ago. This is a piece of mine called Pan Afrique, which also includes Scott O'Connell on steel pan and myself on the congas. And hey, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Derek Jordan. Thanks for joining us on the World Fusion Show. And it's been just great having you. We have so much great music coming up with some fantastic guests. So remember, think globally, listen locally, and support independent music.